Imagine, if you will, that you were among the Sony faithful during May 2006. You, being the insightful fellow that you are, just came off of one of the best console generations in history. You owned the best-selling console of all time, boasting one of the greatest game libraries in console gaming history. You also heard through the grapevine that Shovel Chin Brad's 360 just got the red ring, along with a whopping 54% of the 360's early adopters. Finally, the tables have turned. You've already served with honor during the 05 Mimi War. You knew how to duck your head to dodge a pullback of that boomerang controller. And you know what? You really did want to earn that PS3. So what if you had to get a second job? It's only cause Kutaragi-san had so much to offer you, the loyal fan. This is going to be the year of Sony. It's not like the launch could be any worse than the 360, right?
Beyond just gaming, MySpace creating a virtual society, Ridge Racer.
This is the singing interface where it measures you against the music.
The team at Game Republic has come back to us with a lot of great new features for this game, including such features as real-time weapon change. So here's this giant enemy crab, and you attack its weak point for massive damage.
Sports, NBA team, athletes,
Sports and movies. Movie.
PlayStation 3. Madden NFL, Madden on the PS3.
$599 US, $659 Canadian.
Where did that come from?
Now try not to be intimidated by my immaculate gamer bod. Not everybody can be a certified pussy slayer like me. But I'll try to keep my massive gamer score within my Xbox Live account, just to give you all a chance. Now, my physical perfections aside, let's pull back to that reveal, because it is incredible, for all the wrong reasons. There are a lot of standout moments in that reveal, but I think my favorite moment was this little bit of irony here. Okami, Yakuza, God of War 2, Destroy All Humans 2, Guitar Hero 2. These are games that are now considered classics. People to this day still talk about how amazing Okami was. Of course, Sony didn't want to upstage their darling PS3, so that passing mention, all the time Sony spent on the upcoming PS2 library of games. Clearly, the PS3 launch titles just must have been that good then, right?
Real-time weapon change.
Witness the power of the cell processor as it drains the fun out of video games and leaves behind a highly detailed brown and gray husk. So needless to say, few were left impressed with that game lineup, but people coped as best they could. Of the games revealed, there were 3 that seemingly had some potential. There was Resistance Fall of Man, Heavenly Sword, and Uncharted. The first of those was a game nobody remembers because of its aggressive mediocrity. Though to be fair, it was one of the first games, alongside Gears of War, to popularize the equally drab and hideous gray and brown aesthetic, because gritty and dull is realistic and mature. Lack of color is for real men. Just look at how immersive it is. So I guess in a way, its contributions do still live on. Then there's Heavenly Sword, heavily inspired by God of War in the same way Resistance was inspired by Halo. But that's fine. Iterative games can still potentially be good. Yet, the game manages to just be a more shallow version of God of War, with boss fights that involve fighting the camera more than the actual boss, and some painfully bad range sections. Sure, the game was cinematic, but Christ almighty, this game does not hold up in terms of gameplay. Though I have to admit, Bahan is just... he's a gem.
Kill her.
A lot of the characters in this game are just delightfully ridiculous. Then there's the last game, Uncharted. So is this the game that redeems the PS3 launch? Spoiler alert, it doesn't. The control in this game is fucking atrocious, because anything other than responsive and smooth controls would have interrupted those gorgeously detailed animations. Have to remind people constantly how much work went into those poorly aged animations after all. There is no gameplay here, by the way. It's standard shooter mechanics, cutscenes disguised as platforming, and quote-unquote cinematic moments littered throughout the game, making you wonder why couldn't they just make this into a movie instead of making it into a video game that hates the fact that it's a video game. Now, to those of you familiar with the 06 E3 conference, you might have noticed I left out Metal Gear Solid 4, a game that, like Uncharted, released far too late to be a launch title. Metal Gear Solid 4 was different for me. Unlike the rest of those games, I had high expectations of it. So when it released and ended up as the twisted mess that it was, I wasn't angry, just kind of disappointed and disheartened. It had the potential to be a truly great game. There were good game design elements deep within it, but it was just suffocated under a miasma of just drawn-out cutscenes, ham-fisted and forced cinematic moments, and this almost fan-fiction level of characterization. I wanted so badly for the game to rise up and become the masterpiece I always thought it should have been, but it never came to pass. Where the first 3 games were just kind of forgettable, MGS4 was the only game among them that seemed to have real potential, like it could have been great, if only it had just tried to be more of a game than a cinematic or movie-like experience. So are you starting to see the theme here? This console launch is actually kind of amazing, in that it perfectly encapsulates what makes the entire 7th generation of consoles a dark age. And make no mistake about it, Microsoft was already on the same page as Sony. Sony was just the first to be so blatant about it. This whole spiel by Ken Kutaragi about the PS3 not being a games machine, as he says, really puts that train wreck of a reveal in perspective. Yet as disastrous as it was, it still set some precedents. Game development this generation, it became about making the experience movie-like, realistic, gritty, quote-unquote immersive, all those buzzwords. Because, you gotta get the most out of that 1080p after all, even if it meant that the game barely fucking ran at 30 frames per second. I will give the 2006 launch credit, though, for some of the most bizarre ads I think I've ever seen. Christ almighty. I must have went through everything from amusement to genuine horror watching that. Put you through a pretty wide range of emotions within the span of half a minute. And there are plenty other launch ads alongside this that are just out there. I like it. But I digress. I think quite a few of you might be getting some deja vu right now. This complete travesty of a console reveal might remind you of another little-known console reveal.
Sport television.
But that's a topic for another time. So why don't we instead talk about that console Don Matrick told you to buy if you didn't like the idea of always online?
So, and then we got these Xbox fans, fans of the Xbox 360. The Xbox 360, Xbox Circle, they think they are. They think they're smart as shit. We ain't doing geometry. We try to play some games.
So 2006 certainly didn't shape up to be Sony's year. The console's launch was met with a dramatic thud, and a console that was so poorly designed that the engineer wanted to shut down the production line and reevaluate the design was wiping the floor with them. How does that even happen? That's like losing a roast battle to the kid that eats glue.
Microsoft.
Are you eating your
thermal
paste?
Christ, did I really do a Family Guy style gag? I think talking about this console generation must be sucking out all the originality from me. Oh, I thought I already had that achievement alongside the waste of space achievement I got back when I was arguing on game trailers about how the 360 was just the world's greatest console and that PS3 fanboys were jealous, gay, anal-fisting shit-fuck faggots. Right, so let's talk about that box of the full circular rotations a bit more in depth. And it'd be terribly remiss of me to speak of this self-immolating mecca of gaming without mentioning its super tubular off-the-chain reveal.
Welcome to the Avalon in Hollywood, California. I'm Elijah Wood, and MTV is here to bring you an exclusive look at the new Xbox.
Oh my god, it's the short guy in the Lord of the Rings film. Whoa! And he's talking about video games, even though he has absolutely no relation to them. Double whoa! He was like in a famous movie and shit.
It's a night of firsts. The first time you've seen Xbox 360, and the first time you'll see the Killers perform like this. Ladies and gentlemen, the Killers.
That brilliant clip, by the way, was dedicated to all of you who thought the trend of dragging actors in music bands into video game expos was a modern trend. It wasn't. Microsoft was doing this shit for a long time, and it was as cringy then as it is now. The whole reveal was a TV special hosted on MTV, about 22 minutes in total, and honestly, I'd recommend giving it a watch, because the cringe is fucking delectable, but for better or worse, the reveal did build some momentum, so anticipation was high. So coming in from that TV ad, Microsoft pressed the advantage with their 05 E3 Expo. Right, so the 2005 Microsoft E3 conference was actually pretty decent. They offered a good deal of support for the OG Xbox with a pretty decent game lineup, one that included a port of Half-Life 2, a remaster of Conker's Bad Fur Day, some genuinely interesting looking launch titles too. And holy shit, is that a launch title that has a color palette that goes outside the spectrum of brown and gray?
A legion of warriors hidden inside the body of one. Only you can unleash them.
Yeah, and as it turned out, it was a pretty good launch title, because this was back when Rare was still in their prime and followed the traditional Nintendo game design philosophy of, making games fun first, and it shows here. The gameplay variety and depth within the gameplay really shows. Because of the 360 launching a year earlier, third-party titles like Call of Duty 2, Oblivion, Saints Row, so on, were only available on the 360, not counting the Master Race, of course. Suffice to say, though, the 360 had a hell of a powerful launch in terms of games. Though I should mention before some turbo nerd corrects me in the comments that while Oblivion and Saints Row were intended as launch titles, they did end up being delayed into 2006. But the announcement of the titles at the 05 E3 did give people a lot to look forward to. Hell, multi-flights like Oblivion wouldn't even release on the PS3 until March 2007. And even when the PS3 did get third-party titles, they almost always ran worse, due to the insane difficulty in working with the cell architecture, no doubt, which was apparently done on purpose, by the way. Yes, they made the cell processor purposely difficult to work with.
Real man of genius.
So keep in mind going forward that a large part of Microsoft's success was owed to some moves on the part of Sony that were
very low IQ.
But that successful launch ended up with a few unintended side effects, like giving the 360 the lifespan of a housefly. And as fate would have it, most gamers weren't too interested in the Xbox's metamorphosis from a functioning console to a birdshit colored brick with a tumor, making its best attempt to throw a single colored rave. But the whole 360 red ring thing is a bit of a meme, yeah? It's a pretty easy joke to make, but clearly it was exaggerated to some degree, right? Okay, you get it. The 360 console design was abysmal, but the game library remained pretty promising. Coming in the 2006, the 360 pressed the advantage with the release of critically acclaimed titles like Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, Call of Duty 3, Saints Row, Gears of War. And keep in mind, 360 was the only way to play the third-party titles on that list, again with the exception of the PC. And I believe Warfighter was released on the OG Xbox and PS2, which comes with the caveat of getting a gimped version of the game. Now, me being the jaded douche that I am, the only game that really stood out to me in that list was Gears of War. I've always been of the opinion that Elder Scrolls kind of flatlined in quality post-Morrowind, And while Call of Duty 2 was certainly a standout military shooter, Call of Duty 3 was a lot more of the same, but it hardly means it is a bad game for that. Saints Row, on the other hand, is a more interesting case. The first game is essentially Grand Theft Auto but worse, but the franchise being able to succeed as much as it did was integral into letting the series find its own identity, to get its own legs, so to speak, and become something wholly unique and pretty fun, honestly. As for Warfighter, it's a modern military shooter that does shooty things. Somebody who is more interested in the glistening, realistically rendered, sweaty ball sacks military shooter genre can explain it better to you. I had my fill of the military stuff with COD 2 and 3, but I'm sure it's a great title and all that jazz. Yada yada yada, praise, praise, praise. Though what really caught mine and everybody else's attention in 2006 was a little title called Gears of War, starring Marcus, hands off my chocolate right protein shake, Phoenix. And here's where I will actually give some credit. Cliff Bleszinski, for all his autistic outbursts and retarded hot takes, is a fairly talented game designer. I know everybody had a field day with a Lawbreakers fiasco, and yeah, it was pretty hilarious watching Cliff fly too close to the sun, only to plummet and eat a face full of shit. It's an Aesop as old as the dirt, and everybody likes to see an arrogant loudmouth get hoisted by his own petard. But for all the arrogance, I would say some of it at least is justified. Gears of War is now kind of retrospectively known for helping popularize the brown and gray aesthetic that a lot of military shooters or just shooters in general have, and it's also kind of blamed for popularizing cover-based shooting. However, like Halo and its two weapons limitation and the regenerating shields, the cover-based shooting of Gears of War would end up being poorly implemented in other titles. I'll break it down for you. There is a shitload of things to hate about the 7th generation of consoles, and even Gears of War itself. However, I do think the game design on display here isn't one of the things to hate about it. Now let's talk about the enemy design real quick here. There are multiple enemies within the game that do actively discourage remaining behind one piece of cover. I think one of the best examples of this are the Wretches. They come in packs and are faster than the standard drone, so if left unattended, they will quickly kill you. Movement in this game is just as important to your success as your ability to aim or to blind fire, and the level design in the campaign often encourages flanking routes to get behind the enemy and encourages more strategic movement in how you advance. Weapons like the Gnasher, in fact, actively reward more aggressive play, as it was often the quickest way to end a firefight. The fact that the Lancer has a method of attack that can instantly kill an enemy if you close in on them demonstrates the game was more than just a game of whack-a-mole, which most of its imitators seem to forget. The optimal way to play for some engagements may in fact be the more safe route, just picking enemies off with a long shot, for example. This isn't blanketly true. Sure, shotgunning the opposition is riskier, but it is also a much more swift method of clearing out enemies. And expecting to win every firefight by constantly playing it safe and not using movement won't carry you through the game. The game makes this blatantly obvious to you at the start with emergence holes, which act as a sort of enemy spawning mechanic. A good dozen enemies could spawn from one if left untouched. However, if you manage to get close enough and drop a grenade into one, you can destroy the spawn and stop any more enemies from coming out. The game really isn't a static affair, and it pushes you to be on your toes and be mobile. They put in mechanics like the roadie run to encourage that, and that isn't even going into the Berserker reveal in the first half of the game, and how wonderfully it changes up the gameplay and focuses so specifically on movement as a mechanic. And that isn't even getting into the multiplayer that has a surprising amount of depth to it. Some of the higher level plays you can do here are quite impressive, and most seem to agree, as Gears of War ended up being one of the most played multiplayer shooters, surpassing Halo 2, which you can look back now and kind of brush it off. But keep in mind that the 360 was a new console at the time, barely a year old, so it is still laudable. So no doubt some of you might have noticed I've been riding that Microsoft dick pretty hard here. Well, I'm here to tell you that dick is only a half chub right now. I'll be gargling the entire limp dick pretty hard in a minute here, cause hot damn 2007 was another home run. So the next point I think most would expect I'd cover would be the E3 for 2007. Though, with the exception of console launches and console revisions, covering an E3 wouldn't serve much of a point, as for the most part they are pretty rote and standard affairs, and are mainly used as a way to unveil upcoming games, and it would be a little more expedient and a little less redundant to simply talk about the games as they came up. However, for the mostly bland and standard affair of most E3s, There are special moments of being especially out of touch, or moments that just fill you with secondhand embarrassment. These outstanding moments of cringe happen almost yearly, and to not start off 2007 without mentioning one of the most uncomfortable and disastrous E3 moments in history would be a disservice to this video.
This is exciting. We're at E3, and I just want to say this place is the only place that makes the guys at Comic-Con look like Ocean's 13. Take a minute. Come on, that was... video games, they've been, where are my jokes?
We're at E3, and I just want to say that this place makes the guys at Comic-Con look like Ocean's 13. I didn't edit that, by the way. That was legitimately how he started out the event. But who am I to doubt Jamie Kennedy, after all? He starred in Son of the Mask and Malibu's Most Wanted. He was so good, they even nominated him for Razzie Awards. Don't you get this guy's a big deal? Well, maybe I just can't handle all that comedic hotness. Why don't I give it another chance?
Let's welcome the developer of this game from Neversoft, which, wasn't that the first name for Viagra?
Christ. If I'm being generous, that was the best joke he pulled during that whole fiasco. In fact, this event was so bad, the game developers themselves ended up clowning on how much of a fucking embarrassment he was.
You guys know he's English?
I enunciate.
You do? So I was wondering if I could just do the whole interview as Ozzy Osbourne.
Absolutely.
All right.
Aren't you doing that already?
No. You guys are Americans. You're supposed to be with me. Okay, we're not. Oh, who said that? You never get out of the house, I think. I'll just do one question.
You look a little disheveled, though.
Yeah, I just woke up.
Your upper body needs a little work, too.
All right.
You know, I'm not sure you got the physical presence, the gravity, to be on stage with this game right now. Recover. He doesn't need to do all 20.
Oh, all right.
But I want to bring up now.
What's up?
I want to bring up now a real man.
Oh.
No, not that you aren't.
How much am I getting paid?
How embarrassing does that have to be? To have made your name as being a comedian and getting your ass blown out of the water by some random game developer and having the audience cheer him on all the while as he does it. What a fucking disaster. In fact, the event is so bad that Jamie to this day still gets a little ass blasted about it. Of course, Jamie, being the big-dicked ultra chad that he is, deleted all the tweets, so I'll be reading off a Kotaku article. And for context, these are tweets sent by Jamie regarding a conversation involving Michael Pachter and Gary Whitta discussing the worst E3 moments. This was my 13th E3. Upon reflection, Mr. Caffeine was the worst presenter I've seen at E3, if not the embarrassment of the new millennium. From Gary Whitta, worse than the Jamie Kennedy / Activision train wreck? From Jamie Kennedy, wow. Ooh, dorks can't let that go? You have no idea what really happened because ooh, not in the biz, a spectator. From Andrew Macmillan, at Gary Whitta is a screenwriter, right? I would say he's a participant. From Jamie Kennedy, yeah, he's huge. Didn't he write Transformers? No, nothing. Neviar heard of him, and neither did Bobby Kotick. From Andy McNamara, Game Informer would gladly publish a sit-down between you all to work it out. Maybe get Mr. Caffeine. From Jamie Kennedy, would love to. I can. After this movie wraps, those guys can do, I guess, after jerking off to Zelda. From Gary Whitta, I think I'm in a celebrity feud, but it's hard to be sure since the other guy, A, can barely tweet in English, and B, is barely a celebrity. From Michael Pachter, saw Extreme Movie on cable last weekend. Jamie Kennedy was the one with jism on his chin, and he talks about Gary White and me jerking off? From Michael Pachter, pretty sure Bobby knows who I am. Jimmy was burned bad enough by those clapbacks that he ended up deleting his responses. That little spat out of the way, though, let's move on to 2007's game lineup. Look at this shit. BioShock, Mario Galaxy, Portal, Mass Effect, Team fucking Fortress 2, The Witcher. We even got Half-Life Episode 2. And guess fucking what? All those multiplats are not only on the 360 first, but the Mass Effect port wouldn't release on the PS3 until 5 fucking years later. The BioShock PS3 port similarly had some delays, but it ended up releasing in 2008, so just a year for that one. And the Orange Box was a buggy fucking mess that was similarly delayed with multiple frame rate issues that never really got resolved. It's almost as if making the cell processor difficult to work with was a stupid fucking idea. Shitty ports aside, it did seem we were missing a game from that 2007 lineup. Now what was it called? What was it? Mayo? NATO? Play-Doh? Plato? Oh, Halo. Halo 3. That's right. And wow, did this game change everything. Unlike Gears of War, I don't feel like I really need to explain why this game is fucking great. Its reputation to this day is still quite glowing. There are plenty of other people far more professional than I am that can tell you that anyways. The worst thing I can really say is that the third game of the Angelic Rings leans more on the refining what worked with the last two games sort of thing, rather than adding a huge bevy of new features. And honestly, that's fine, because they refine this experience to a beautiful fucking sheen. And when I say features, I mean gameplay features, because this game is brimming with new community tools. Forge mode, theater mode, screenshots. Halo 3's greatest addition was the community tools, the custom content, the stupid ass clips and screen caps you can make and show your friends. Halo 3 was like nothing else both at the time and now. This emphasis on community played a large part in forming the gaming community's identity. In this nascent stage of the internet, when YouTube was still a new and developing platform, Halo 3 would inspire montages and machinima series like Arby and the Chief, The Forgotten Spartans, Matchmaking, and a ridiculous slew of others. People like Keemstar would, by pure serendipity, popularize the trolling subgenre and, as the meme goes, like a roach, endure and survive to become one of YouTube's most prolific content creators. Some of you might be feeling a little cheated now with all this praise I have been showering on the 7th generation so far, but ye of lacking patience are yet to be aware that of this bountiful harvest during this year, there was a small but just barely noticeable foliar disease growing on that delicious crop of corn from the fields of Call of Duty. While Call of Duty 4 itself is a fine game with some truly standout levels, it set a particular precedent. A precedent that would grow from a mole to a tumor and gorge around the entire games industry by the end of the 7th generation. It was a game that had already thrown out some design elements for the sake of realism and immersion, minor snips at first, but this trend only worsened as time passed. COD would end up taking the multiplayer crown too, with its free-for-all clusterfuck style of balancing and its killstreak highs taking point in place of, well, a carefully balanced multiplayer experience. But there was some dumb fun to be had, at least. Comparatively, I think the only real highlight for Sony during 2007 was what? Uncharted? That piece of shit non-game? Yeah, the 360 was kicking some fucking ass in 2007. The best Sony exclusive in 2007 was fucking God of War 2 for the PS2. How fucking embarrassing does that have to be showed up by your previous console? God, that's like losing a beauty pageant to your grandmother. Yeah, sorry Karen, but you really kind of packed on the pounds this year. Maybe stop filling your water bottles with ranch. Well, 2008 would be another good year for the 360. It would still continue to feature the best multi-platform games for one. I mean, you would think the console that doubles as a suicidal easy-bake oven would be getting smeared right now, but Sony wasn't just content to shoot themselves in the foot. They are stuffing themselves feet first into a wood chipper. Really, it is kind of amazing that people still pretend this intentionally developer-hostile architecture was some sort of misunderstood prodigy of computing. To you people that still defend the cell processor, what sort of mental illness do you suffer from? On what planet was this decision to make this architecture purposely hard to program for a good idea? At least the 360's red ring shit was at least partially on the side of incompetence and short-sightedness. And you know, you don't even have to follow my word on this whole shit. PC Jesus Gabe said it far better than I ever could hope to.
The PlayStation 3 makes my life as a software developer much harder. All of a sudden I'm supposed to figure out how to have this asymmetrical, multi-threaded game, right? And I've never written a single line of multi-threaded code ever, right? It's not like I was like lying awake saying, I need to re-architect every line of code I've ever written in order to get it to work. So one of my junior programmers who's writing game code rather than system code could slow things down by, in a real world case, by a factor of 80 because they're doing something out in the AI or in the game DLL, which used to be totally safe. And now all of a sudden the whole system just slows down. And then one of the really experienced programmers have to go in and say, oh, you can't tell that you're doing this, you ran out of registry space and this other thing happened, and no, there's no debugger that shows this to you. And writing for SPEs and writing in a PlayStation 3 environment, it's like there are incredibly few programmers who can safely write code in that environment. You make tiny little changes to code running on one of the SPEs and the entire thing will grind to a halt. And you have no visibility into why that's happening. It's just sort of magically running really, really slow.
I think what is the most infuriating part about the whole cell processor thing is that it is a total 180 of Sony's previous MO. Part of why Sony had such massive success with the PS1 was because of how developer-friendly they were. People often forget it, but Nintendo back in the day were fucking tyrants in how they treated third-party devs. They were incredibly authoritative about what could or couldn't be put in the game. They dictated how many copies of the game could be sold at once. They had a history of this for a long time. So to see Sony turn away from that and pull the exact same shit, it's frustrating. Makes you want to root against the fuckers. Don't shit all over what keeps you in business. Spurting out over the cell processor for being shit aside, let's get back to 2008's impact on gaming. And I don't think there's a better way to start this year than with Nintendo's infamous E3.
Good morning!
Oh hey Deborah, didn't see you at soccer practice yesterday. Was worried about you and the kids. Was gonna Facebook you, but I got caught up in scheduling an anti-vax protest.
How can you not be happy when your job every day is to get up and think about video games? Now, of course, as a mom, it helps to be at a company like Nintendo. As my son Davis said in my Mother's Day card this year, Mom, I love you more than anything. And not just because you bring me all the video games.
Well, if you had any doubts about the audience Nintendo is appealing to now, this E3 sent a pretty clear message. Nothing like bringing Mom to E3 after all to talk about the hottest new Nintendo titles. Now, I don't begrudge this person for having a happy family or having enthusiasm for what she's pitching, but this is a video game expo, not a wholesome board game night with Granddad. I don't think a video game press conference is the first thing I think of when I think of a family night out. But family night with hip video game mom wouldn't stop for nobody.
I've never done this.
Oh, you are me right now.
Okay. Oh, I'm you. Okay, I'll try to do that.
There you go. That's a method. So, I mean, just the view from the camera is so cool. Nice run. That's all right. Done.
All right. Woo.
Yeah.
That's not bad. 1,000 points. Oh, go, girl, go! Yes.
Very nice.
Imagine what it must be like for the people watching. It's like your mom embarrassing you in front of your friends by trying to act hip and cool around them, but it's stretched out to an entire half hour.
What this small accessory does is make the Wii Remote more precise, more responsive, more intense. It's called Wii Motion Plus.
I love that, by the way, the silence after the announcement. Yeah, here's an accessory for the Wiimote that makes it work less poorly. Genius. Jesus Christ. I guess if there's one thing I can give the Nintendo E3, tons of passion, as misplaced as it may be.
Bring the house down, guys.
Oh, God. That was certainly something else. No words for that. Well, as a shock to nobody, the press conference was not terribly well received for its transparent attempt to appeal to the casual market with hip soccer mom and the huge emphasis on motion control gaming. The backlash was intense enough that it managed to force the normally reserved and quiet Nintendo to issue an apology to everybody who attended their E3. Ouch. Though while Nintendo might have humiliated themselves during E3 2008, the games both by them and other developers helped to make up for it. We talked about the ongoing multi-platform superiority of the 360. We got games like Fallout 3, which honestly sucked in comparison to what came before, GTA 4, which is forgotten now because GTA 5 exists and actually remembers it's a game, and didn't try to rip out the guts of a film reel and wear that shit like a video game analog to Buffalo Bill. GTA 4 did leave a historical impact, however. It certainly wasn't the first game to do DLC, but it was the first game to prove DLC could be successful. So once again, me being the piece of shit cynic that I am, I will say without hesitation that GTA 4 can proudly flaunt itself as the game that set us down the path of Day 1 DLC. Now granted, they made it with good intent, but not everybody in the games industry acts with noble intent. Thus started one of the many plagues this generation contributed to gaming as a whole. And before you bring up the horse armor, that was more of a microtransaction if you ask me. And it also set a trend for the gaming industry like GTA 4. But Bethesda had very little goodwill with their gesture. Because, well, let's face it, Bethesda has always been kind of shit, let's be honest with ourselves. There was very little passion in it. Just wanted to milk you for every last motherfucking dollar. Another beautiful shit-encrusted feather to add to the cap of the 7th generation of consoles. I'll tell you, that's turning out to be some baller-ass bling on my chrome-ass dome. 2008 had its highlights, though. Dead Space was pretty fucking good, as was Left 4 Dead and Devil May Cry 4. We also got Gears of War 2, which again, good fucking game. The variety of new mechanics and enemies they added really feels like it showed there was more ground to be covered with the game. It's good stuff. And for Sony's part, the least I can say was that Metal Gear 4 had some good moments. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with that game, and you know, Little Pig Blanket was kind of cute, I guess. So at least Sony isn't sucking as bad as they did last year. We also got Super Smash Bros. Brawl on a Nintendo side of things to nicely remind us Nintendo still exists. Oh, they had Resistance 2. That was okay, I guess. Not really. Oh, and a new Call of Duty game. Great. Yeah, Call of Duty is what I get when I have my own Red Ring of Death after eating too much Taco Bell. Do you like my scatological humor? Do you appreciate that? The cracks were already beginning to show in 2008, and in 2009, despite some fairly respectable high points, things were on their way towards tumbling down. You see, Microsoft and Sony had both witnessed the success that the Wii had with grandmas that just wanted to have bowling night with the grandkids. So, with all the composure and thought processes of a 12-year-old running across the front porch being told dinner is ready by mama, Sony and Microsoft raced inside to stick their grimy little fingers in the motion-controlled gaming pie.
Please welcome Steven Spielberg.
The vast majority of people are just too intimidated to pick up a game controller.
That's right. If you haven't grown up playing games comfortable with your thumbs, it's a little daunting.
That's true. And despite the size of the industry, still 60% of households do not own a video game console. And
Well, I guess you kind of have a point there, Steven. Where are our video game consoles, and will I be given the rank of elite gamer when I join it? So after Steven goes to talk up about how super revolutionary the Kinect is will be for gaming, we get a few demonstrations of the device.
You ever wonder what the bottom of an Avatar shoe looks like? Well, bam! There it is. All right, so let's get in.
And really, that's just such a perfect foreshadowing for what was to come with the Kinect. And lest I forget Sony's cash grab answer to the Wii.
No way. So sports are kind of a no-brainer, but you could hold anything in your hand. I do want to point out, notice how fast it's tracking his motions.
All right, let's try this. Yes.
The PlayStation Move, as it panned out, was a fun gimmick that people spent about 5 minutes on before tossing on the shelf to collect dust. Of the 3 motion-controlled devices, it is the most accurate and precise. Though, that's a lot like saying you're the world's tallest leprechaun. It's something that's more fit for a kid's book about quirky fun facts than anything else. The PlayStation Move and the Kinect, respectively, would release a year later, thankfully, for 2009. So, in terms of the game lineup, 2009 remained at least somewhat admirable. 2009, for Sony's part, after 2 years of eating dirt, was finally starting to pull themselves from the muck, and started off the year with a now beloved marketing campaign.
Dear PlayStation, I got my boyfriend a PS3 and he still hasn't hooked it up to the internet.
What? What is this, 1992?
I know.
I mean, if you're not on the PlayStation Network, you can't get PlayStation Home, PS1 Classics, you can't download movies, TV shows.
I know.
It's like having a bathroom without an aromatherapy candle. Still gets the job done, but come on.
He hates candles, too.
Come on.
I know, right?
What's wrong with him?
PS3, now $299.
PlayStation.
The new ad campaign featuring the character of Kevin Butler is largely considered the turning point for the PS3. The ads were more concerned with catering to gamers first. The character in the ads was charismatic and consistently funny, thus keeping the ads consistently enjoyable, and the start of the ad campaign kicked off with a price drop for the PS3. So along with Sony finally pulling itself up this year, the game releases for 2009 remained pretty solid, even with the specter of motion gaming still looming. Batman Arkham Asylum was genuinely innovative with its grappling and combat mechanics. There was Left 4 Dead 2, which was a solid title, and fuck if Dragon Age Origins wasn't one of the best traditional Western RPGs ever made. Hell, Sony was even starting to make a comeback with the fucking masterpiece that was Demon's Souls. I'll even give props to Infamous. Not too bad, Sony. But for those few good games, we had to wade through shit like Modern Warfare 2, a game that was so obsessed with the shock of the first nuke scene that the whole single-player portion of the game felt like a limped attempt at recapturing the gravitas of the game before it, which was followed by more uninspired, bland FPS games like Borderlands, with 50 guns that did slightly different things. Movie wannabe shit like Uncharted 2, whatever the fuck Resident Evil 5 was. New Super Mario Bros. For the Wii, which was just another basic 2D Mario but with 3D graphics. And oh look, Halo 3 DLC, repurposed as a full game without a satisfying story and less enjoyable gameplay. Fucking jumping for joy here. Oh, I also forgot, we got Minecraft, a game that would go on to bring joy to thousands of autists around the globe. That will ironically probably be the most controversial opinion in the video too. 2009 at least showed promise, with Sony beginning to get their shit together, and simultaneously the same year that Microsoft's Stiffy started to get a little more flaccid. 2010, meanwhile, would only exacerbate the limp dickness of Microsoft and make Sony look like a geeky virgin who couldn't last more than a minute in bed. 2010 comes as a pretty strong contender for one of the worst years of the 7th generation. And its E3 does an admirable job of giving us a pretty vivid idea for why that is. So, without further ado, I think we should let the boys at Konami take it from here. Best buckle up, buckaroos.
As far as for some of you that can't attend the entire performance or the presentation, I just ask for you to exit at the back of the room. Any noise that you make in the room will be broadcast on the internet live. So be conscious of that. If not, you might end up on the internet in a sound at least, and we don't want that to happen. So please, yeah, you don't want to do that.
Welcome to the 2010 Konami E3 press conference.
Just want to interject here and just marvel at the fact that the first presenter was talking about how important it was to leave through the back of the room, and then fumbles around about how the guests might get internet shamed for making too much noise if they didn't do that. Then one of the other presenters does exactly that, with steps that sound like it's from a giant.
Can we roll the trailer, please?
You know, when you start to think about the presentation as a carefully crafted joke or comedy act, it kind of makes sense. You got a callback to the uncomfortable awkwardness of the loud stomps to the stage at the start to come in with something familiar, mixed in with the dead silence and added awkwardness of the next presenter having to unseat himself from the audience chairs to get up on stage. Then the dead silence with what eventually culminates with one of the presenters politely asking to play the trailer. Then, just when you think it couldn't get any more embarrassing or awkward, a little Windows confirmation pop-up box pulls up over the trailer, just to twist the knife just a little more. Like, just a little extra fuck you. That is masterful. Who says there isn't a place for awkwardness as a comedic style?
Hi.
God, this gets better as it goes. I love the subtle exasperation he had with the audience, particularly, by the way. Like, hello? Why aren't you clapping? We're Konami, and a still image of our game title should be getting standing ovations?
今日は
One of the things I think the benefit of hip hop is that we have President Obama.
1 million views on one of your video performances on DefJamRapstar.com makes you a rapper, and there's no joke in that. Someone will become famous with this game.
So, some common themes you might be noticing now is technical difficulties, diluted expectations, and Japanese presenters that would have benefited a lot from a translator, to put it politely. And now you're probably thinking, Christ, this couldn't get any worse. I mean, the presentation just had a few awkward presenters, but at least they didn't hire backwater wrestlers to promote a game nobody cares about.
La Parca. Silver King.
Okay, they hired wrestlers for the presentation, but surely they wouldn't play fight on the stage. Surely they would have the dignity to... Jesus Christ. I so badly want to believe this is some sort of galaxy-brained 4D chess parody of E3. This is fucking surreal. But nothing stopped that Konami train from rushing ever forward.
トレーラーの中に残脱という言葉が出てきましたが
In the trailer, you saw the concept word Zandatsu.
And the battle with the armies of the more than 1 million troops. 1 million troops. Wow. 1 million troops. I love you guys.
1 million troops, goddammit! Why aren't you clapping, you ingrate fucks?
2 players mode and making even harder.
Might add more stages, but again, that all depends on you guys.
皆さんいっぱいアピールしてあげてください。
So please help promote this game.
Guaranteed to have fun as you shoot the core. And now, a sneak peek at the girls of Otomadius Excellent.
Do I even need to comment on this? I mean, between the developer begging people to advertise their games and having an anime night during the presentation, I don't really know what I can say.
Hey, gentlemen, save it for the ring. Save it for the ring. This is tomorrow. Hey.
Save it for the ring. Save it for the ring. It's tomorrow, 1:45 p.m. Give it to me. All right, so I'll take it in the back.
This is not originally hack and slash anymore. This is an extreme hack and slash title. Not funny.
I honestly don't know if this is a cultural fish out of water situation, or if the guy is genuinely always this awkward and thirsty for positive reinforcement. Whatever the case, I'm not sure whether to just laugh or feel bad for him. I know at least some of this isn't his fault, but good God.
It's meant for you all.
Oh, come on now, just don't tease him and let's get on with the announcement.
Oh, Konami is talking dancing to a full new level.
So wait, you're telling me that it's gonna be Dance Dance Evolution?
Dance Dance Evolution? No. We would be using a mat and more. We will dance with absolutely no controls. No longer tied down. Now you can move your body freely. Let us show you. Tommy and I'm still a beginner in dancing. But because we played this game, we can kind of dance now.
Nah, I don't think so. There's nothing we can show everybody.
I know.
Oh my God. Look at him go. With his little banana shirt and whatever dead animal that is on top of his head.
If you just continue to press the same button like X, 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 and Y, 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 and X, X, and Y, Y, Y again, you'll be sucked. Right?
He's so smug about it too. Jesus. God, it just doesn't end.
Come on, what's this? Oh.
Dude.
What's that?
So these green silhouettes is where I pose, right, Naoki?
Yeah.
And these streaming arrows, I glide my hands.
You know, I rag on banana shirt Japanese guy, but you gotta admit, dude can really get down with it.
So, in the last dance sequence, I think you're able to see both.
No mat, no controller. It's just your body.
Okay, enough of that. You get the point. The Konami E3 that year was a disaster. So bad that Konami was scared off of putting that much weight behind E3 again. So, why don't we take a peek at Microsoft and Sony?
So what does the development really think about this technology? Let's take a look.
What we're working on is really the next generation of user interface.
Sony spent quite a bit of time during its E3 propping up the PlayStation Move, and did all it could to build up the hype for it by announcing a lineup of Move games at the E3. Sorcerer was a notable launch title for it, and unsurprisingly, was quickly forgotten. Might have something to do with Move not being very good, but hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! That joke hasn't been run into the ground. Microsoft was largely the same as Sony, in that it spent quite a bit of time on the Microsoft Kinect, its own motion-controlled device.
Skittles, where are you? There you are. Skittles? Hi. Okay, get down now. Skittles, be careful. You okay? Good.
That's the smile, something that is enjoying watching you slowly bleed out. That is some uncanny valley shit if I ever saw it. Jesus, just look at that shit. That belongs in a fucking slasher film. Aside from that nightmare fuel, I will voice a moral complaint here. E3 stands, or at least at the time stood, as one of the biggest events for gaming at the time. As such, E3 is/was one of the most critically analyzed events in the gaming sphere. So, I do have some particular moral quandaries about shoving a 12-year-old onto a live demonstration to shill a product that the investors must have known the gaming public would pan or mock. I feel like that kind of goes beyond just putting kids in a commercial to sell some shitty toys. The whole thing felt insidious and slimy, and left me with a pretty negative impression. The rest of E3 showcased a few more Kinect games that would fail to connect with the audience. And if you were a bit disappointed with that joke, well, now you are in in the shoes of people who bought Star Wars Kinect and all that other slop they shoveled at E3 2010. Other than that, they released a revision of the 360, the 360 Slim, which addressed the general hardware failures of the 360 with a much lower failure rate, a whopping 5 years after the release of the original 360. Which is notable because the PS3, which released a year later, had its Slim model released in 2009, a year before the 360 Slim. But gold star for trying, I guess. But enough about E3. How about the game lineup? So what to talk about first? How about Mass Effect 2, which told a much better story than the last, but also featured combat so fucking boring, you pause to wonder if it's been taking the worst aspects about COD and Gears of War. And it does. The enemy AI is about as perceptive and thoughtful as a goldfish, and unlike Gears, which had AI that can put pressure on you, even on the highest difficulty, camping a single piece of cover and taking quick shots to chip at the enemies is almost always the dominant strategy. And it's fucking tedious. The only thing the higher difficulties will challenge you in is your fucking patience with how fucking spongy the enemies get. They don't get harder to kill, just longer. That's about it. Got God of War for the PS3 finally, which was good, but felt like something was missing from it. I think the only truly standout game we got in 2010 was New Vegas, which admittedly was pretty fucking great. Just a shame it was a mangled fucking mess of bugs and crashes. I swear that tight deadline was on purpose too. Like Bethesda wanted Obsidian to fail so they can point out and say, "See, I told you the OG Fallout team wasn't as good as you remember." We also got Halo Reach, which was a good game, but it was such a far cry from Halo 3, and it added crap like Bloom and Sprint, which I will at least partially blame for giving 343 shitty ideas to run and trip on. Still, good in a lot of ways, but a step back ultimately. Aside from that, what really was there? Another shout-out ass Creed game? COD Black Ops? Medal of Honor? Battlefield? All this shit blends into each other. It's all the same dull, repetitive, unimaginative horseshit tinged with modern military wankery. And if you thought the uninspired military shooter shit ended there, you would be so unbelievably wrong. Though, as with every year, let's dive into the E3 before getting into the thick of things.
Oh, we'll get those other coins next time.
Yeah, kid sounds like he's super into it. Off to a great start, though. Having kids on stage to shill your shitty product? Good stuff.
Lightsaber on!
If that isn't some horrible foreshadowing for how the game would turn out, I don't know what is. God.
Blue! 42! Jet hike!
Unresolved anger after being cut from the football team 17 years ago? Big time.
I still have issues.
And that's about as much time as I'm spending on the Kinect stuff. So let's look at Sony.
Give me the remote, man. Let me show you. What can you do? Give me the thing, man.
And we'll be partnering with AT&T as the exclusive carrier for PlayStation Vita in the United States. There we go. Now.
You can hear the boos in the audience. Yeah, people weren't too thrilled about having a shitty monopolistic ISP as their only carrier for the Vita. Who would have saw that coming, huh? You might have also noticed that the Vita bombed pretty hard in sales. That aside, though, you might have noticed the blatant celebrity cameo. And I'll have you know, EA is above such barbarism. They're a very cultured company.
At EA, we do it a little different. We don't build elaborate stages and invite random celebrities for guest appearances.
That's a lot like what I do musically. Before I go into the studio, I have a game plan. Oh, I almost cooked.
Yeah, we don't do that thing where we invite random celebrities to promote our game. Not at all. Pay no attention to Lil Wayne and his mangled silver grill promoting FIFA. That's all from the same E3, by the way. I didn't splice together separate events. This was all from the same EA E3 event from 2011. God, how embarrassing does that have to be? Of course, I saved the best E3 2011 moment for last.
Let's
go back in time, shall we? Doodle, doodle, doodle. Hey, want to come over and play my Wii? Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. Here, hold my Joy Wand. Yikes!
Yep, that's good old Mr. Caffeine, with his super witty dick jokes and his highly evocative time travel sound effects. Who doesn't like seeing an elementary school kid pull a talent show for the big adults in the audience?
Although, I wonder what this game would have looked like had we released it long ago. Doodle, 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 doodle. Although, I wonder how this might have looked 20 years ago. Doodle, 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 doodle. And this absolutely epic fail right here. Yikes! Yeah, so I'm talking about the loud, obnoxious, slightly deranged poop on your toothpaste. Although, I wish this could have all started when we all had a Commodore 64. Doodle, 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 doodle. Everyone do it with me. Doodle, 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 doodle. I said everyone go on, doodle. All right. Yes, I'm not afraid of a few dick jokes, thank you.
Now, I do want to give credit here. While watching him is like watching your kid put on a talent show with all their best fart jokes, I do appreciate his passion, and the little skits he puts on tread into the territory of being so bad it's good. I can get why people couldn't stand this presentation, but I do get a sort of ironic enjoyment out of it for what it's worth. Aside from E3, how did the game lineup look for 2011? 2011 came out swinging with a vengeance with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Like there was some contest that shit out the most bland and by-the-numbers shooter in existence. But it did have some stiff competition with Battlefield 3. And you know, it's fucking sad when a casual viewer can barely tell the difference between two different game titles. But then Uncharted 3 came in, saw what was going on, and was like, look you guys, your bland bang-bang shooting is pew-pewed all wrong. My device shoots fragments of metal at a very high speeds in a very cinematic way. It's so much more dramatic, dude. Of course, the battle for being as bland as possible simply couldn't end there. Skyrim had something to prove. Open world games were so much better than linear designs, after all. What better way to prove that than with aggressively boring fetch quests? A basic Babby's First combat system, and a shitty magic system that would make you think you were summoning tickle lasers for all the damage and impact they were having visually. And if you get bored of the side quests, you can always go back to the main quest, which has all the narrative quality of the book report written by a kid drugged out on Ritalin. And while Bethesda was busy making their mark on the industry with the most bland RPG ever, Nintendo was hard at work with Skyward Sword, because who doesn't love a game that has to be universally dumbed down to make room for motion controls that don't even work half the time? Brilliant! And when games weren't being bland, they decided to have identity crises, with games like Dead Space 2 deciding horror was way too niche, let's go action game now. Dragon Age 2, as it turns out, wasn't too far behind on that stupid idea. I half expected Dead Space 2 and Dragon Age 2 to dye their hair jet black and talk about how nobody understands them anymore. The developers sure fucking didn't. You know, it's almost like Dark Souls was watching this whole shit show go down, and in some misplaced sense of nobility, try to dive in and save the bloated corpse of the 7th gen from drowning. And with the end of 2011 comes 2012, and to be quite honest, the E3 for this year was pretty forgettable. A couple big-name games thrown to the starving public, tone-deaf announcements, and of course, an obnoxious insistence on motion controls going on for years now, which left the gaming public just a little peeved, who were expecting games that were actually functional.
That's not exactly what we agreed upon, is it?
Well, I lied. But here's that Kinect game I promised you.
No. Save it for Christmas. Shove it just right back up your ass.
And so this generation shambled on for 2 more years, like a zombie with its foot bent backwards. Or 1 year if you consider the release of the Wii U the end of the 7th generation. With that interpretation of it, Jesus did the 7th gen manage to go out on the most bland and miserably boring note imaginable if that's the case. Far Cry 3, Borderlands 2, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, Hitman Absolution, Mass Effect 3. Wow, do you think you got enough games that shoot? Yeah, those are all the big games. That's it. What exactly was the standout fucking game there? Mass Effect 3? The game that gives you a coloring book for an ending? I remember Dishonored getting Game of the Year and just laughing. The fact that that year was so bad for games that something like that would get nominated, let alone win. Fucking circus is what it is. And that brings us to our last year. I won't cover the E3 for 2013, mostly because that is more within the realm of the 8th generation. Just straight to the games for this year. So 2013 was shaping up to be just as laughably bad. Grand Theft Auto 5, Metal Gear Rising, and Saints Row 4. Aside from that, what? Dead Space 3? That bipolar train wreck of a game? The Last of Us? You mean that game that somehow makes the movie fetishism of Uncharted look tame? Batman Arkham Origins? You ain't serious with that shit, are you? Oh, but we did get Twatterfield 4 and Call of Duty Adult Dressing Up for Halloween Edition. Ooh, look at that edge. Thankfully, 2013 was the last year for this god-awful generation. Nintendo sure made bank during it, and consequently lost it by trying to double dip on the casual gamer market. If you're wondering why Nintendo got so little mention here, well, their success was irrelevant for the most part for people with more than a passing understanding of gaming. That and their wild success ended up costing them anyways. Regardless, 2013 was the year the Dark Ages finally came to an end. And that'll wrap it up for this video. To those of you that stuck around to the end, thanks for watching. It took me a hell of a long time to make the video. If you liked the video, do please leave a like and a comment. Or hey, leave a dislike if you hated it. And if you like the content, do consider a subscription as well, because I have a few other gaming related videos coming down the pipeline. Catch y'all later.